Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to CarrieLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
This show is brought to you by Miles Franklin. They've been selling gold and silver for 22 years, and I'm a customer because when you buy, they ship. For more information, go to milesfranklin.com or call them at 800-822-8080. Ed is a loyal listener, emails me regularly. He's an extremely savvy investor who's been preparing his financial survival plan for years. Ed, welcome to the Financial Survival Network.
Well, thanks, Kerry, very much for having me. Very generous of you to invite me onto the show.
Well, I love to have guests on the show. I wish more people would connect with me, reach out. You could always find me at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Email me, kl@kerrylutz.com, or just leave me a message on the hotline, 800-999-CASH, cash, 800-999-2274. I answer all email and messages. We're getting so much email, comments, and everything. Hard to keep up, but I'm doing it. Ed, tell us a little bit about yourself. How old are you? What do you do? And
I'm in my mid-50s. I live in Westchester all my life. I grew up in Hastings-on-Hudson. I have a wife and two daughters, one of whom is graduating college in May. Thank you very much. And another one will be going in soon. So very interesting time, very busy time. I come from a professional background of sales. Actually, I've been selling telecommunication services to the Fortune 250 for about 25 years now, meeting their needs to connect their various locations globally to be able to communicate among themselves and to the outside world.
Mm-hmm. When did you start investing?
Well, I've been an investor for a while, but I really only discovered the natural resource sector and precious metals, I'd say, about 5 years ago. I was never a very astute investor prior to that, but I was always very astute at politics and history. So when I started to understand the nature of money, both fiat and the real stuff, let's say, it gave me a new perspective on a lot of the things that I thought I knew, and provided me with good tools to understand the picture going forward and to start to align my moves accordingly.
Yeah, and it's great that you mention history, because when you want to understand the monetary system, you must go back in history. You mentioned, listen to that interview I had yesterday with Bob Hoy. He is somebody who studied every single financial collapse from the time of the 1600s and tulip mania in the Netherlands. And the disturbing, alarming thing, and I know you have children just around the same age as mine, is that they've stopped teaching American history in the schools. And I know this because, I won't mention names, but someone very close to me went to a very exclusive private school in New York City and attended an extremely prestigious college in the D.C. area. And when I interviewed Dr. Mark Faber a couple of days ago, the headline was, "Go East, young man / woman." And I said, "Do you get that?" And she had no idea what I was talking about. "Go West, young man." And that's not like you go to law school and you miss the day you cut the class where they taught law. We spent weeks on Manifest Destiny, on the westward expansion of the United States. Horace Greeley said those words, and for somebody who's an American to not know them, do you find that shocking?
Absolutely. I've really become aware, among other things, in this last 5 years of just how much education and other things can be wielded in the hands of, those who'd like to keep a lid on things, to either teach or not teach that which helps or does not help their agenda.
Yeah, it's agenda-driven education. And I didn't really invite you on here to talk about this, but when you mentioned history, it triggered it, and it's something that I wanted to discuss. And I'm not using it as a pretext for American exceptionalism, because that is a debatable thing. I believe that our system, as it was created by the founders and as it was adhered to up until the early 1900s with the birth of the Federal Reserve and the income tax and prohibition, we were exceptional in that regard, but I think those days are gone. And that leads to the next thing, is that if we're no longer exceptional, if the country's system is, then how do you go about protecting your wealth? And you mentioned resources, which we kind of had an epiphany, you and I, around the same time. I got killed in the dot-coms. I was ready to retire, lost virtually everything. And then, this thing came about in 2007, and I knew the bust was coming because I was in Las Vegas, and on the back of every taxi cab was 3-bedroom, 2-bath, townhouse, brand new, no money down, interest-only mortgage, $700 a month. And I looked at my partners and I said, it's over.
Right.
It's gone. Because once you don't have to put any money down on there, and there's no income, no asset, no nothing, liar loans, ninja loans, it's over. And sure enough, it collapsed. So then we get back to true wealth, and the wealth that this country was largely based upon, which was resource extraction. So tell us your theory of how you make money in resources, Ed.
Well, I could get very complicated with this, Kerry, and maybe you'll have me back in another time for a deeper dive on history. But
that would be great.
To keep things simple for today, the way I looked at it is, as you said, I'd been through a number of the busts, the dot-com, real estate, this, that, the other thing, and I figured I had had enough of that. And, my wife and I have both been working for a number of years. We have savings in various vehicles, and, I really considered that I had enough paper. What I didn't have enough was something other than paper. And again, we talk about investing and the importance of diversity within one's investments. Well, if one really is just diversified within dollar-denominated paper, they're not truly diversified. So I really wanted to get some eggs completely out of that basket. And knowing that, gold and silver were monetary metals, and
historically so,
absolutely,
had been since time immemorial until the last 100 years, right?
Yes. I figured that I didn't have enough of that, because at that point I didn't have any, and I became very quickly aware of at least the theory of getting leverage against the price of gold by investing in miners. But of course, that has turned into what is apparently reverse leverage these past 2 years since we made some money from that. But as Granddaddy Rothschild said, it's a great time to buy when blood is running in the streets, and it's certainly running in the streets now.
And Warren Buffett picked that up from him, who we all secretly believe is one of Buffett's sponsors, don't we?
Maybe his great-granddaddy, I don't know.
I think there's an argument to be made that Warren Buffett had some sponsors earlier on, and they were part of the elitist establishment. So yeah, gold, silver, and you talk about fiat money, which is paper that is just born into existence, monetary units by decree of the government, and eventually every fiat monetary system fails, correct?
Absolutely correct. I mean, if you really do the checking, and it wouldn't take one long, every fiat system in history has collapsed. It's just been a matter of time. And, just because this one has been on extraordinary in various forms of life support since the 2008 crash does not mean that things have really gotten any better. Frankly, I know you, like me, and many other people wish that history was allowed to take its course. At 2008, things would have bottomed out. We'd be back on the way back up, and instead of having a situation where the too big to fails even then are significantly larger, they would have gone the way that, they tell me they believe in evolution, but evidently they don't believe in dinosaurs dying off.
Evolution for everyone but them.
There you go.
The elites believe in evolution for you, but not for them.
The rules are always different for them.
And these derivatives, they're just the latest scam. An interesting thing that Bob Hoy mentioned, but that I've verified from my own independent research, is every credit bust that takes place, and this is just a credit bust, always resulted from creativity in the financial sector. So during the Great Depression, the thing that had helped facilitate it was options. So options were banned in this country on everything for many, many years except agricultural products, where they really did help create a liquid and stable market. But other than that, Glass-Steagall, which was an act passed in the early 30s that split investment banks, which you could just say gambling banks, from commercial banks, which were just banks to take your money and hold it for you safely and provide you a return, hopefully. That's why Glass-Steagall was passed. Then in 1999, through a whole lot of lobbying and Robert Rubin and Bill Clinton, it got removed. And at that point, I looked at it and knew that we were going to repeat exactly what happened in the Great Depression. The other thing that happened was that Fannie Mae, Federal Housing Finance, whatever it stands for, passed $1 trillion in holdings, and Freddie Mac was $700 billion. And I remember talking to my friend who was a financial guy, and we agreed they're now too big to fail. You can't allow them to fail, but yet their failure was virtually assured. So at least when you've got metals, Ed, right, it's nobody's obligation. There's no counterparty risk.
That's absolutely correct. And, that became very important. It's funny what people remember and how then quickly they forget. Counterparty risk became the watchword in terms of what to be careful of during the 2008 crash. And people are right back into the market doing a lot of the same things they ever did. I mean, look at these ridiculous moves in Priceline and Apple and Google. Granted, I suppose if I was in early and those valuations went to where they are, I'd be happy, but I'd also be getting out. Because, my goodness, as I say, people just seem to have a very, very short memory. And there's just such a feeling like they've blown up a bubble that's really unsustainable, and it's going to burst. So I was very pleased to adopt a two-pronged strategy, where one side, and the first most important side, is the acquisition of physical precious metals, gold and silver, to the extent that I and my family can afford to buy some each and every month. I've replaced other dollar cost average type of investments strictly with metals. Now, for a while, I was investing more actively in miners, but I kind of got sick of getting my hand caught by catching falling knives, and I've decided to hold off on that. But, Kerry, one thing, we can also talk about perhaps in another date is, a very interesting area that's heating up and may make us some money in the interim while we're waiting for the guys to stop beating the heck out of the PM miners, is graphite. And we can pick that up another time if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. We could talk about graphite later. I know that that it's definitely on the move, and there's a lot of hype at it. I saw it at the Vancouver Natural Resource Investment Conference that a lot of graphite miners were showing up, which they're calling it another essential rare earth element, effectively. And just to sum it up, when you're dealing with brokers, do you ever listen to brokers now, Ed? Do you take their advice?
Can you be more specific in terms of what you mean by broker?
Stockbroker or investment advisors who are kind of like in the old paradigm, paper investing.
For the most part, no, Kerry. But I do have a very close friend who went on to own his own financial consulting business out in Mendham, New Jersey, and has quite a client list. It's one that I could only aspire to becoming part of. But, I do still have paper investments. I don't want Andy Hoffman to hear this, but I do have, feet in both worlds, let's say. And, sometimes in terms of the paper side, it might be wise to listen to some of those folks. But I'm very skeptical about what they say and really where they come from. They're a bunch of, Keynesians, and they come to a predefined set of conclusions or recommendations, apparently.
Yeah, I think that you can create something out of nothing, and that you could just create more and more currency units. Nothing bad is going to happen. I mean, my next guest, a couple guys that go by the name of the Value Guys, pretty savvy stock investors, but at some point there's going to be a global reset, and if you're not ready for it with some metals, and say everything you own has to be in metals, but you got to have some exposure to them as an insurance policy. Because as I said to a friend of mine, I said, if you thought that you had a 1 in 5 chance of dying over the next 5 years, would you buy life insurance? And it's like, oh yeah, for sure, not a question. I said, what if I told you that there was probably a 50-50 shot that the dollar, if it doesn't lose all its value, will lose 2/3 to 3/4 of it? Would you buy insurance to protect yourself against that? And it's like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. But that's what you need to be thinking of, because the odds are pretty good. Right now, the dollar is looking strong because there's so much turmoil in Europe, but eventually that situation is going to be worked out. We're going to find out how bad off the U.S. really is, and then you're going to be sorry that you didn't have your financial survival plan in place. It's been Kerry Lutz with Ed Caccia, Financial Survival Network, 1490 WGCH.